round 5 of the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh World Cup. We're in sunny Innsbruck in Austria, the Olympia Ice Canal, twice a venue for the Winter Olympic Games. Down below us, below the mountains, is the city of Innsbruck itself. And here, just outside the village of Eagles in the Tyrol region of Austria's mountains, we are on the 64 and 76 Winter Olympic venue. Alongside me is Anne van Nieuwenhuis, and you slid the Innsbruck track this morning. It's very different this year from what we normally come to expect, isn't it?
Exactly. There's a lot of ice on the track this time. The straightaways are a little bit more narrow because there's a lot of ice on the side. Here you can see us coming out of the start grooves going into curve 1, and it's really a lot of ice on the right side of curve 1. You want to shortcut it here. Try not to wave too much in curve 2. Take a shortcut again. Try to go diagonally late into curve 3. You just want to travel as less distance as you can do in the top of the track. Curve 4 is where you start to pick up a little bit of speed. You want to stay long on curve 5, have some height in curve 6 so you can come out with pressure and go late into Kreisel. Then you want to have a nice high line, but control this straightaway up until 8 is very important. That's where you can gain or lose the speed. And then you want to come out of curve 9 with some right pressure. Avoid the tap and the skid. Go really high in curve 10 so you can shoot it out, collect as much speed as you can get. Do as less as possible in the labyrinths, but bring it out, and then you have the finish curve 14, where you just want to dive out and you cross the finish line, and then we have the interesting braking stretch with a curve in it. So you'll see some of the brakemen being challenged a lot by stopping the sled.
You definitely will. Our World Cup leader is Francesco Frigyk, the 2- and 4-man Olympic and world champion, and he is flawless so far this season. He has not lost a 2-man race. Oscar's keeperman is Nico Walter, who's now absent with a blown hamstring. They are 2nd and 3rd in the standings. I'm afraid Nico Walter is going to start to tumble down the order in 2-man and 4-man. It looks as though he may be out at least until we get to North America in a few weeks' time. So those are the World Cup standings after the first 4 races of the season. There are 8 World Cup races and then 2 weeks of the World Championships in Whistler. There's Hansi Lochner. 1 result so far this season in the 2-man for him. He didn't go to Sigulda and he crashed out of the 2-man race in Altenburg, so he's only had 1 result. It was on the podium last time out, his home track at Königssee. Now, about the track this season, it is different. It's more, you need to drive it a little bit more. The other thing that you notice when you're on the track POV is that it's gone anti-clockwise Kreisel. You think of most of them you're turning right. Does that make it different for the drivers, or is it just that it's part of the track?
This Kreisel is a little bit similar to the one in Winterberg, where it's also a left side. There's not a lot of pressure in this Kreisel. It's not like any of the Kreisels in Altenburg or Königssee. It's much lighter. You want to let the sled fly, just control it a little bit. They don't have big waves, so it's a different feeling than the last 2 Kreisels we had the last 2 weeks.
25 sleds on our entry list as we start with a World Cup rookie and end up with Drazen Cilic making his 2-man World Cup 2nd race. So 25 sleds in race 5 of the BMW IBSF 2-man Bobsleigh World Cup. We start with rookie Patrick Geiger. His World Cup debut, the 26-year-old, 21-year-old brakeman Christian Huber has 5 races in his career, all in 4-man. So this is a brand new pairing for 2-man and for World Cup, and Geiger is coming up in a hurry from the Europa Cup because Benny Meyer is out for most of the season with a torn hamstring. So Patrick Geiger now is having to learn at the top level.
It looks like he's having a clean run at the top. Just a little bit too early into Kreisel. That's not the line you want to have, but so far he hasn't made big mistakes or big skids, so it's looking clean.
2 years so far in Europa Cup, the junior level of sliding. This obviously his home track, he knows it relatively well. And that is as good a place to make a debut as you possibly can on the track you've got most knowledge of.
Very clean lines, a little bit low in the beginning of 14, but manages it really well.
All right, 52.33 slide. And on the brakes, Christian Huber. This is the most important part. Brakeman never brakes during the run, otherwise you get disqualified because it destroys the track. But here it is so important to be very good on the brakes and get the sled stopped before it shoots out the end of the tunnel.
Really great job of the brakeman here. Yeah. They're only halfway through the braking stretch. He's very happy with that. Coming out of 6, he just stays on a little bit too long, which pushes him over on the right side before going into Kreisel, and then he shoots up a little bit.
But you've got to try and hold the line, haven't you, round the Kreisel?
A high line, but control it at the exit. And here you can see him going into 13. Just a little bit of airborne runner there, and stays a little bit too long on the curve, which gives him a lot of pressure at the end.
Rocking and rolling off the penultimate corner. Patrick Geiger makes his World Cup debut. Well, Michael Vogt knows what that feels like. This is only his 4th two-man World Cup start. Again, another young driver. Now, he's only spent 1 year sliding in Europa Cup before coming to the World Cup. And his brakeman, Alec Noosa, only make his 2nd ever two-man start. So the Swiss really rebuilding their program this year.
And a really good shortcut in curve 1. Going diagonally to curve 2, controlling the waves there. A little bit of an early entrance into 3, but that's not a major problem.
Well, they had luge here just a couple of weeks ago, then Europa Cup more recently, but the track is still cut quite round from the luge.
And again, an early entrance into Kreisel. You want to avoid that right wall there. Really nice exit, going diagonally to curve 8. And controls it nicely, but still catches the wipe, which pushed him into a skid.
Nice height in corner 10. Sets him up with speed in the labyrinth. A little late, though. These all come at you really fast, don't they?
Yeah, and it's very cold today, so the ice is quite fast.
51.87, that's a good run for him. That's half a second off the all-time track record, 51.25, set by Francesco Frugic and Torsten Margis in February 2017. I wonder whether that might come under threat today. Like you say, it is very fast. I mean, it was -9 when we arrived at 7 o'clock this morning. So the ice has been really hard overnight.
He's coming at a 9 here and just stays a little bit too long on the wipe. And that's why the back end gets pushed away and he breaks into the skid.
Right in slow-mo, see the sledge shimmying away behind the driver. Just a tiny little tap. So, decent-looking run from Michael Vogt. Let's see how the Swiss ends up when we're 25 sleds into the field. Next up, Justin Olson of the USA, the first of our field who did race here last year. In fact, of the pre-Olympic field last year of 28 or whatever it is, only 9 of the top 20 finishers are here. Okay, so we've got no Canadians, Nick Cunningham's retired and a few others, but still, there's quite a turnover of athletes. And a few notable absences like Nico Walter. Josh Williamson behind him did the NAC last year with Hunter Church, the NAC champion. This year started with Cody Basque. It's only the brakeman's 5th ever two-man race.
A lot of new athletes in this field, a lot of rookies. That's what you'll see in a post-Olympic season.
And this is a great track to try out a new speed merchant, isn't it? You know, you need that every 100th of a second at the start.
Exactly.
Neatly
Going late into 4, which has a little bit too much height there. But it's a free line, so it won't cost him too much time.
Early in his two-man driving career, Olson came here in 2016 not to compete in two-man, but as one of the 4 runners.
Nice looking line in curve 9. Very good exit and straight to curve 10.
Last year only 13th in a two-man race. The year before his World Cup debut in Innsbruck, he was 4th. Now, which one of those Justin Olson drives is this? That looks like a pretty decent one, 51.88, 100th behind Michael Vogt of Switzerland. Coach Brian Schreimer looking pretty happy with that. Teammate Alana Myers-Taylor led the first heat of the women's race this morning and then slipped back to 3rd place. And that was a couple of mistakes creeping in with Alana, but she only did 2 runs in training, sat in for both of those. And how different a track is it today with the polish and the cold of the ice?
It was already pretty fast in training, so it wasn't that much of a difference. But you can definitely feel the ice was less bumpy today than we had in training, so that was... It was a better feeling driving the track today. But you can still see the sled bumping up and down.
Well, you can't lay ice flat if the surface isn't flat. So Yeah.
We got to get in the O's next push.
Yeah.
And have a little bit better drive. Thanks for watching.
All right, so you're only going to find 1,400s. Wow. Oh, no, 700s to get down. OK, so here we go. Dominic Volchek, Czech Republic. 16th World Cup start in two-man for the 26-year-old from Prague. His best, 6th in the two-man here in December 17. And matched that in Sigulda in the season opener last year.
5:07.
Wow.
That's one of the best pushes we'll see all day. They've been pushing really well the previous races.
Jakub Nosek, the brakeman, making his 15th World Cup start in two-man. He is definitely their go-to guy.
Great looking lines at the top of the track, really shortcutting the straightaways. Stayed long on curve 5, just as you want to, and goes late into Kreisel. Keeps a little bit of a lower line, but manages the exit really well.
Just building speed all the time, 3,500s up. Little slower than Michael Vogt in terms of top speed. Now the mistakes.
Yeah, a little bit too long on curve 10, and then it pushed him over early to curve 11.
Now he's still well ahead though, 2,900s up. Speed at the bottom though, Vogt 122 and only 169 from the Czech sled.
That's the mistake in curve 10 that cost him a lot of speed. You hit before going into 11, and then you have to work really hard to get it out of the labyrinth.
All right, so 2,900s ahead of Michael Vogt, 3/10 ahead of Justin Olson. That's what it feels like on the block. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Bang, away you go.
Exactly.
And again, the athleticism of the drivers, we talked about this in the women's race, just to get over that cowl and get in. It's a lot of effort because you don't want to be pulling on the sled. You've got to be pushing the sled as you leap in.
And here you can see he has to do a lot of work to bring it off, and then some airborne runners.
Yeah, brakemen get bounced around at the bottom of the labyrinth for sure. So 4 down, 21 to go here in Innsbruck on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Stunning scenery all around us. And next up, Alexander Bradikin of Russia, his 5th ever two-man race. He started the season in Sigulda, has done all the races so far in his debut World Cup season. Just 23 years old. For Malaysia, has raced here once. 1 Europa Cup outing.
And I think he's having a really great debut season as a World Cup driver.
Yeah.
5:28, not as fast as you would expect from him.
Little dink into the wall, the sled meandered right out of the grooves, didn't it? That doesn't help.
No, and that'll cost him a lot of speed. Already 4,600s behind, and that's a little bit of the start and hitting before curve 1. Controlling it better now, having a high line in Kreisel. But a great exit going late to curve 8. Nice high point out of 9. Just a little tap there, but comes early into curve 10. Bit of a lower line, but controls it. And he's letting it fly in the labyrinths.
He's not afraid of doing that, is he? We've seen that a couple of times already this year. He's quite happy to let the sled do all the hard work. Rookie brakeman, hard on the brakes, late on the brakes. This is Vladislav Zorotsev's first ever two-man race in the World Cup. He's had 2 years in the Europa Cup, predominantly with Alexander Bradikin. But neither of these guys very experienced here in Innsbruck.
Yeah, you can see his foot got caught up a little bit, and that's why he takes a little bit more time to get his arms in, get his push bar down.
See, the sled's already out of the groove, steering itself. We can still see his hands above the cowl.
Yes, and then you just hit the take-on of curve 1.
It's not a lot, but here it doesn't have to be, does it?
No, you don't want to be early into curve 1. You just want to shortcut it, try to make the top part as short as possible.
Starter number 6 is Maciej Lucia, Poland, his 20th World Cup race as a two-man driver rather than a brakeman, which he was before. It's his 3rd World Cup here as a driver. He was 27th first time out, 22nd last year. And Krzysztof Tarkowski behind him, his 17th World Cup start in the two-man.
They had a really great result last week on European Championships. It really was a breakout performance for them.
Yeah.
So I think they are looking for another race like this.
Yeah, the Poles and the French were just so excited with their results in two-man in Königssee.
And it's great to see the small nations are doing well.
Yeah. And it's great for confidence as well, isn't it? It just reinforces that self-belief.
And most of the time the funding is evaluated based on championships results, so these European championships are very important for these small nations.
Yeah.
Great line out of 9.
Third at the start.
Highest line there.
Fourth fastest still.
A little bit late in the labyrinth, so he has to do a lot of work there.
I think everybody in the moment is getting late into the labyrinth, aren't they? Fourth at the line, 51.96. We'll have to wait and see how our top stars fare. I think once we've seen Francesco Friedrich's line, then we'll know how the labyrinth is treating everybody. He's the go-to guy, isn't he? If you want a good run, let's take a look at him.
A lot of it depends on how you get out of exit 10, and then it sets you up nicely, or you have to do a lot of work if you get in too early into 11.
Yeah. And as on so many bobsleigh tracks, corners aren't individuals, are they? We number them individually, but one leads into the next, to the next, to the next.
And here you can see him coming out of 12, doing a lot of work, and then bouncing into 13. And then he stays on long, but brings it down.
Well, he didn't have a panic. He watched the runner tips. He wasn't having a big steer to haul it off. He knew they were safe enough. And any more steering just costs you time. We talked about Poland's result in Königssee, a huge weekend also for the French. In fact, they've had 2 weekends that have produced enormous results. 5th and 4th in two-man for his two-man races for Roman Heinrich. 26-year-old discus thrower Lionel Lefebvre in his 3rd World Cup start in a two-man. So we've got a couple of throwers on the sled, former shot putter driving, former discus thrower hoofing it off the top.
His regular brakeman, Dorian, has a little injury, so that's why I think they changed their brakeman up.
And last week, their 4th place at the line with Justin Cripps in the top 3, translated into a bronze medal in the European Championships. Again, a huge result for France and their first this century. Oh, little skid.
Yeah, and these are small things, but they cost a little bit of time and speed. Good exit out of Kreisel. And a nice high line in 9.
25th and 14th here in his 2 previous World Cup races.
And that's a better exit out of 10, but still long on 12.
Catching up a little and 2nd at the line. That really was a good bottom half there.
It's a really close group there.
Carrying a lot of speed as well. 121.6, 2nd fastest sled at the bottom. And the sponsor on the front there, Bontaz, it's a French company that has also built a 4-man sled that they're using for the very first time tomorrow.
Oh. Here you can see him coming out of 6, just stays on a little bit too long, and that's why the back gets pushed away and breaks into a skid, but nails the exit of 9. Goes middle to 10, and that sets you up for a good line into 10.
Well, they persuaded the French Federation to support him last year, and this year they'll be able to turn around and go, look, this is what you've done, 2 top 6 finishes in 2 weeks. Next up, Marcus Trike of Austria, tied for 17th place here in last year's World Cup race. Marcus Gluck behind him, the former loose slider. 10th, 8th and 11th this season. Trike having a breakout year.
And this being his home track, he'll be eager to do even better. 5:19, not a bad getaway. A little wavy in curve 2. He controls it nicely. Straight line to 3.
Marcus Trike 6th in the World Cup standings in two-man this year. He's had 2 previous World Cup races, 31st and 17th. Now that's quite some progression.
And he also had a little bit of that skid going out of curve 6. Good exit of Kreisel. And he has high speeds as well.
Hovering around a top 3 finish here. Let's see. He was
nice
a fraction behind Michael Vogt in terms of pace. What's he got at the bottom? 121s, 122. Looks good in the labyrinth. And at the line, Fifth place, 51.96. All right, tied with Maciej Lācis of Poland. And 800s behind Justin Olson. 900s behind Michael Vogt. And a tenth of a second behind Robin Heinrich of France. So already we're packing them together like snow in a snowball, aren't we?
That's what the men have been doing the whole season.
Well, your race wasn't much different. Everybody was jammed together from about 4th to 10th within 15, 1800s.
Coming out of 9, middle, and bouncing around. You can see the ice is a little bit bumpy.
And look at the runner tips. You don't see anything in the profile. He's just coming straight down the tubes.
And then a great high line here. And then you can really dive it out and carry the speed going into the labyrinths.
So Dominic Volchek of the Czech Republic leads from Roman Heinrich and Michael Vogt. They're all praying for snow right now to interrupt the first heat. That ain't coming today, though. Next up is Oskars Kybamanis, the man who lies in 2nd place in the World Cup rankings. Silver, silver, bronze, 5th his results this season in two-man. Martis Miknius behind him. And Kybamanis up and down here, 24th, 8th, 12th, and then 8th and 8th in the last 2 years in two-man.
He has a great start normally, so I would have imagined he could do a little better here.
Yeah. 100th off the fastest start of our leader, Dominic Dvorak.
And a great diagonal line from 2 to 3. Nice control in the upper part of the track.
Well, one thing particularly we've noticed this year is that he is absolutely fighting for medals every time he gets in the sled.
A little bit late going into curve 8. And not the same speed than Marcus Streichel in the previous run. A little bit of a lower line there. He goes middle early to 11.
Wow, the speed isn't where everybody else was, but he's already in the green. He's overhauled Dominic Dvorak. It won't be by much. 900ths of a second, 51.49. Well, that won't be enough to lead the first heat, I don't think.
And he found a good shortcut at the end in curve 14. Really dived it out there on the left side of the line.
He's a quarter of a second, 2400ths off the all-time track record. We might be close. Second heat, as the temperature starts to go out of the air, we might be close. We'll wait and see. Look at the big hit at the start. Martis Miknius getting the rear runners off the ice, so that's energy going up and not forward.
Exactly.
And he'll be kicking himself for that. He won't have known, he won't have felt it, but the video will show that he's not getting forward into the sled quite as much as he wants.
These guys are so strong. This sled is just... It's so light and it's easy to pick up for them.
Next up, Russia's Maxim Anjanov. The Russian was 21st here last year, missed the cut. And again, up and down. 17th the first time he raced here in two-man, then 26th and 21st for the ex-luge slider. But he's having a good season. 5th, 5th, 6th and 8th. Not out of the top 8 yet this year. And again, Anjanov with the better-known names. Kazhinov and Stulnev no longer in the team. Anjanov seems to have been a #1 waiting to happen all that time.
Yeah, and he really produces great-looking runs. He finds the speed in the track. Just like that, shortcutting it from 2 to 3, just how you want it. Free line in 3. And a good control in curve 4. Long on curve 5.
Really noticeable in the women's race, of all the sleds, was Nadezhda Sergeva who really let it fly. Couple of hits, she didn't steer, and actually helped her work her way up the order to a top 5 finish.
It is a balance of controlling it and letting it fly. Definitely on this track. A little hit before going into 11, so has to work a little bit more getting it out of the labyrinths.
Across the line in 8th, 52.10. Maybe just trying to keep it a little too tidy. And like you say, you know, as everything, you know, there is a balance in competition about outright speed and about feeling you've got the control and somewhere finding the happy medium.
He doesn't look very pleased with that.
No. As low as he's finished all season right now, in 8th place with only 10 sleds gone.
Here we can see him coming out of Kreisel. A little bit of ride pressure. and touching the wall on the right side before going into 8. And he comes out of 10, really close to the left side, and just touches the wall before going into 11. And then it just pushes you away a bit. You get your height later into the curve, so you have to work harder to get it out.
Oscar's keeper Manis, the narrow leader over Dominic de Volchek, Roman Heinrich and Mikkel Vogt, with Justin Olson and the rest hot on their heels. 10 sleds down in Innsbruck, first heat, race 5 of the BMW IBSF two-man bobsleigh World Cup. And our Olympic champion Justin Cripps next up for Canada. Cam Stone's behind him. Coach Graham Richardson called the women's race early. Now he's back in the day job, watching these guys get onto their final two-man race here in Europe.
5:11 and a really good line out of curve 1.
2 races in the two-man this season. He's led them both, had a silver medal at the end of them both.
And it's looking really good so far in the top of the track.
Cripps was a silver medalist here last year as well, so he's got good recent history.
Nice control out of Kreisel, but just touches the left side. I don't know if it puts him into a skid just before 8.
Start as fast as our leaders and haven't caught the Latvians yet. 800's back.
A little bit long, curve 10 there as well.
Needs big speed down here, 121 and change. The Latvians weren't that fast, 1100, so he closed down in the last couple of corners. Brakes, 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 brakes! Oh, and the front runners end up on the rubber. Well, luckily it's no longer tarmac or concrete, but even so, they spent a lot of time polishing those to mirror smoothness.
Exactly, that's not what you want, especially after the first run. You still have one more run to go. You want to have your runners as good as it gets. And here you can see him out of Kreisel, just touch it, and then a little bit of a skid going into 8.
Does he hit the hammer?
Yeah.
Just about, just about.
And then coming out of 12, clapping off.
Yeah, he really had to pull it off, didn't he?
Yeah, but he decided to let it run a little bit free, and that's what you'll have then.
Yep. All right, so guys down at the bottom there helping out with the sled. So we've just had our two-man Olympic champion. Who's our two-man Olympic champion as well? Francesco Friedrich, because the Canadians and the Germans tied for gold in Pyeongchang, with Torsten Margis behind him. Friedrich now third, fourth, first are his race results here in World Cup and World Championships, don't forget.
5:08, second fastest start, and a really good looking line from 2 to 3.
Now, how happy will Dominic Dvorak and Jakub Nosek of the Czech Republic be? Yes, outstarted Friedrich and Margis.
That's what they have been doing all season. They're right at the top starts. But Friedrich already showing how to drive it. Boy, just avoids the wall going into curve 8. And he holds it off a little bit too strong out of 9. Nice high line out of 10. Going middle to the labyrinths. And he's letting it fly. Just not doing a lot.
And he's going to be in the lead by a 1/10 of a second, 51.39. So he is in front, and the track record, 51.25, 1400s in the second heat. We've seen him do it the last couple of weekends. It could be. Yesterday in the skeleton race, this sort of time in the afternoon, the track was definitely quicker in the second run. We'll have to wait and see whether it's the same for the bobsleds.
And he didn't have a perfect run yet. Made a bit of a mistake out of 9. Here you can see him out of Kreisel. Just avoids the left wall going into curve 8.
Ooh,
but
hits the hammer
with the back runners. And out of 12, you can see he's just letting it fly. Doesn't steer too much.
Well,
you have a choice there. You can make them nice and round, or you can just try to shortcut it, don't do a lot of steering, and most of the times that's a faster line.
Friedrich looking for two-man win number 35 of his career. Meanwhile, Yoon Jung-won and Jin-Soo Kim, the 33-year-old Olympic silver medalist in four-man with his 23-year-old Brankman. One's record here, 28th 3 years ago, and then 10th and 11th in the last couple of seasons. This year, though, in two-man, which is not his stronger discipline, 14th and 12th, 9th in Altenburg, and only 20th in Königssee.
That definitely wasn't his best race.
Well, of those, the track most like this is Winterberg, but they didn't race two-man there, so 5:17, that's not a great start compared to a 0:708.
And a little wavy in the middle of curve 2. Didn't really catch that pressure point. Nice and long line on curve 5. A little bit early going into Kreisel, but avoids the wall in the skid. Long on Kreisel, but puts him middle to 8 and has a lower line there. Really had to do a lot of work. Nice and high in curve 10, going middle to the labyrinths.
Well, this is going to leave him hovering around Maxim Antonov of Russia, 9th, 10th. Unless he finds more speed at the bottom, 8th at the line, 51.96. That sounds familiar. Oh, yeah, that's because he's in a three-way tie with Markus Trike of Austria and Matthias Luthi of Poland. So, again, we are racking them up.
Only 1/10 away from 5th place. So.
Yeah. So that's 6 sleds now, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 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 covered by a 1/10 of a second.
Coming out of 9, he doesn't skid, just drifts over a little bit with the pressure he created out of curve 9. And then he tries to bring it early to curve 10 because you don't want to be late there. And then again, the free line in the labyrinths, like we've seen most of the guys do. And it creates a lot of pressure if you don't steer a lot there.
It is still really tight there, isn't it, for a modern two-man sled, never mind a four-man. Yeah, it's not easy to thread the eye of that needle. 14th of our 25 starters, first heat of the two-man bobsleigh in Innsbruck in Austria is Ralf Bertsens, another one of our rookies this season. Made his debut at home in a double two-man weekend in Sigulda. Just 21 years old, has raced here once in Europa Cup last January. David Springers is brakeman, relatively new to two-man as well. This is his 6th two-man World Cup start. 5:17 getaway, same as Yun Jung Won.
But a better control of that pressure point in the middle of curve 2. Going late into curve 3, just as you want to do it, shortcut it at the top of the track.
Well, Bertens didn't go to Königssee last week. He was racing Europa Cup. He's had a 7th and 7th in Sigulda and a 10th in Winterberg.
Little unstable coming out of curve 6. But a great exit of Kreisel. Lower line through curve 9, and then you have to work harder to bring it out.
Big skid there, drops him out of the top 10 on the split times. Is he going to be close to Andionov and Bredikin at the line? There's only 700s between the Russians, and he is right between them, almost exactly in the middle.
Didn't have the same speed as the previous sleds we saw.
Well, Bertens still learning these tracks. Only one previous race, only 4 training runs because one day of training was lost. So I don't know how many he did in 2, how many he did in 4-man. Must have done 2 of each to qualify for both races. So
exactly.
Limited in knowledge.
And here you can see, because he had the lower line, he had to work harder in the exit and then bumps the wall and then tries to go early into curve 10.
There's Ralf Bertsens, currently lying in 12th spot of 14 sleds. Don't forget, the slowest 5 will not make the second heat. Not sure he's in that danger zone yet, though. Now, here's a face we're going to get more familiar with, I think. Germany's Christoph Hafer, the 26-year-old, raced in Sigulda in the two-man because Hansi Lochner wasn't there. He's racing here in the two-man because Nico Walter isn't here. Nico stepped out of the two-man sled at the end of the second heat last week and could barely stand for four-man day. Looks like he's really blown his hamstring, so he joins Benny Meyer on the sick list. Christoph Hafer with Matthias Sammer. Hafer's got plenty of experience. He's the 2- and 4-man Europa Cup champion, knows the track well, and can clearly drive.
5:20, only the 9th fastest start.
5 silver medals in Junior World Championships in 2-man and 4, and gold in the 4-man as far back as 2015. Christoph Hafer's been bubbling under for a while for Germany.
They have so many great drivers in Germany, and it's so hard to get into the World Cup team.
Yeah, and it's not just the men either. Talk to the girls who are in Europa Cup. They'll tell you exactly the same.
Exactly. They have been winning the Europa Cup races regularly, so if you put them in the World Cup, they'll be just as good as the World Cup drivers they have.
Well, 3 years ago, all our current World Cup drivers were exactly that, Europa Cup drivers.
Exactly.
Ooh,
A little long there, letting it run free.
It's not a bad-looking run, though. And at the line, 5th place. That is a very acceptable substitute indeed for Nico Walter. Matthias Höpfner applauds that.
And he made a little bit of a mistake out of curve 9, had a little skid there, so without that skid, he could have been a little bit higher.
Yeah, well, it's always good if you're quick and there's still stuff to tidy up, right?
Exactly, then you can only do better in your second run.
Yeah.
Comes out of 9, a little bit too long. The back end catches the wipe and it gets pushed over, and then he breaks into the skid.
Not even a flinch on the D-rings, though. He just knew it was coming back.
And then he's long on curve 12, but lets it flop off. Doesn't steer too much.
The head gets snapped away. There's Christoph Hafer on the left, Matthias Sommer on the right-hand side. So 15 sleds into our 25-strong field. Friedrich, Kiebermanist, Volchek, Krips, Hafer. Entertaining top 5 already. Next up is Canada's Nick Polignato with fellow 31-year-old Ben Coquell. From Hamilton, Ontario, the driver, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, the brakeman. Both former footballers. One played driver for Bishops and the other in the CFL. 5:12 start.
And a good control of the first curves. Just steps going into curve 3. He wanted to create the pressure to go in late into curve 3, but had a little bit too much, and that's why he touched the wall.
5th fastest start, and he's got the speed on board to hang out in the top 5 at the moment. Little nudge on the crossover.
A little bit too long on 6, and it pushed him over before Kreisel.
Still in 5th, still in 5th, exiting the Kreisel. This is a good run from Nick Polignato.
Great looking line out of curve 9.
Well, they head home for the Canadian Championships in Whistler shortly.
Oh, too long on curve 10, and that's why he gets pushed away in 11. Had to work really hard.
Still letting it fly. This is still a top 5 run. It's 6th at the line by 800ths of a second. Take that every day of the week, Todd Hayes and Graham Richardson.
Still fast despite not being a perfect run.
126 kilometers an hour. Second quickest, Friedrich, at 123. Wow. Loosey-goosey was quick for Nick Polignato.
Sorry, we got more. There's more there, eh?
More in the start and
Out of
more in
curve
the
6.
drive, yeah.
Yeah. Comes out of 10, catches a little bit of the second pressure, hits the wall before going into 11.
Well, listen, if they can find 100th even at the start and tidy up those two, they could be challenging this guy, Francesco Friedrich, the multiple world champion. 17th of our 20 sleds, Cody Basque of the USA, the 24-year-old from Whitehall, New York, with 31-year-old brakeman Hakeem Abdul Sabur. And Hakeem started in 2015 with Justin Olson, then Nick Cunningham, before coming to the World Cup with Cody Basque. Basque's World Cup results here, 16th, 21st, and last year, 7th. Now that's what he wants to repeat.
Cody has been coming back from a calf injury, but is back to full health.
Yeah, back to something approaching. At least he's pushing instead of having to sit in as he was in Winterberg, or at least in Altenburg.
5:14 is not a bad getaway at all.
Yeah, only 600ths off the leader start. When you're within 600ths of Francesco Friedrich, you know you're in the ballpark.
And his upper part of the track looks nice and controlled. Just a little bit too long on there and skids before going into Kreisel. Dived it off, but still went middle out of Kreisel.
Now let's see if he can find speed at the bottom in the BMW sled. Little wave going 9 to 10. 122s is what he needs at the bottom. Again, little late into the Kreisel. Where's he going to be? Top 10, top 12. 52.04 is 13th in the first heat. You can hear him shouting, brakes, through the tunnel. And he is, what is he? 800ths off the three-way tie for 10th.
Only 1700s out of top 7.
Yeah.
So it's all very close. Out of curve 6, just a little bit too long, and then the back ends get pushed away, skids. And then here he had to hold it off. He had the lower line, had a lot of pressure, and then skids, hits the wall and skids again. That's why he lost a little bit of the speed.
And if he tidies up just one of those, that'll give him a 10th. If he tidies both up, might give him as much as 2 tenths. So Cody Basque lying in 12th. Great Britain's Brad Hall with Nick Gleeson behind him, the 22-year-old from 3 Para. 28-year-old driver Brad, been here 3 times in Europa Cup, did the World Championships here as well in 2016, and he's had 3 World Cup starts. 24th, 24th and 19th on this track. Now, one thing he will have here, hopefully, is a big start from Nick Gleeson. And that helps. You know, it's not for nothing this is known as the Austrian Push Championships.
And he has a new sled. He's driving Benny Meyer's 2-man sled. Only had 2 runs in them in training. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do with that.
I tell you what, the last couple of weeks he's learned a lot, because last week he was in a Swiss sled from Billy Meyerhans, this week in an Austrian sled.
Out.
Yeah, and he hasn't got time to take his hand off the D-ring. It's not like a steering wheel. If you take one hand off, you're only steering in one direction.
A little tap before going into curve 3 and going late into curve 4.
Again, like you said, brand new sled. It does the same things, but different. The feel won't be there.
It takes a little bit of time to adjust to a new sled, so this is definitely a fast sled, but I'm not sure if he's used to driving this one yet.
Yeah. Well, like getting into a different hire car, it's going to take a few minutes to get used to it. He's only had a couple of minutes driving down the track in it, literally. Across the line in 10th, 51.90. Well, that is very encouraging for Coach Lee Johnson, for Peter Ramseidel there. And Lee was telling me last night, the hope is that if Benny's not fit for the North American leg, and certainly for Sam Ritz, they're going to try and do a deal, but Lee's got to find some funding to rent it. So at the moment, good first trip from Brad Hall.
Comes out of 6 with a little bit too much pressure and breaks into the skid before going into Kreisel.
And with only 2 trips, he's having to guess how to drive it rather than know.
Very free line in 12, not a lot of steering going on there.
Well, in Benny's hands, we know it responds well to not a huge amount of steering, but that means you've got to get the line right going in. Well, next up is Hansi Lochner, 4th in this race last year for the 28 from Berchtesgaden. Silver in the World Championships in 2016. He's won here in Europa Cup as well. Florian Bauer behind him. His first World Cup race in 2-man. He's only raced 8 times in his career in 2-man, the brakeman.
He's not racing with his regular brakeman, Christopher Weber, because he still has injuries from the crash in Altenburg.
Yeah,
5:05.
Well, Christoph will be sitting there going, right, I really need to get back fast.
That's a great getaway from the guys.
Really is. Fastest start of the field. Now, can Hansi Lochner drive himself into the medals here? 1 finish this year, and he's had a bronze medal out of it.
Very clean lines looking so far. A little bit early to Kreisel, but no tap or skid.
And the, quote, 4-man expert, Hansi Lochner, just with half a nose in front. He's going to lose that, though, isn't he? He's tying now with Friedrich. Needs a great labyrinth.
Doesn't have the same speed as Friedrich, though. He's letting it run free.
He's going to be in 2nd place. How far is the gap? 1st to 2nd, 0.08 of a second. A 10th behind to 3rd. Excellent. What a race we've got on our hands for the 2nd heat.
It got away from him just a little bit going out of Kreisel, tapped the wall there, a little skid going into 8, and then a really high line in 9, so he had to work hard to get it off.
And all Friedrich's mistakes were earlier on. He found more pace in the labyrinth, and that's where Hansi lost it.
Here you can see him coming out of 9 and still has pressure. That's why he's so high in the end. And then taps the wall. Doesn't break into a skid, so it doesn't cost him a lot of time, but this is just a few hundreds, and that's all he needs to catch up with Friedrich.
He's still looking happy with that. I don't
sure I've seen him. Is still padded from the injuries.
Still got that raw flesh underneath it. 20th of our 25 sleds. Next up, Rudy Rinaldi of Monaco. Two 25-year-olds in this sled with Rudy and brakeman Boris Van. Rudy silver in the Junior Worlds here. He's had 6 Europa Cup starts and raced in the World Cup here as well a couple of times. 13th and 23rd in the last 2 years. And last week in Königssee was his first two-man race of the year. In the World Cup, at least.
.522, 16's fastest start. Nice control in curve 2. Middle into curve 3.
The guys from Monaco, I think, looking slightly enviously at the results the French team have produced in the last couple of weeks. Similar size setup and a lot of shared genealogy between them.
They're not working together as closely as they used to the previous years. They have different coaches now, so it seems to be working for the French team, how they have set up now.
Well, the Monaco team, coached by Bruno Michon, famous French bobsled legend.
A little tap before going into 11, and that's why he worked a little harder to get it out and had the lower line.
Speed at the bottom, 121 compared to 123 of Francesco Friedrich. 52.06 for Rudy Rinaldi of Monaco, and that leaves 4 sleds behind him, so he's pretty much guaranteed a trip in the second heat. At the moment, though, our rookie starter, Patrick Geiger of Austria, is the man at the tail of the field in 20th spot.
Coming out of 9, drifts over to the left side, hits the wall, but then comes back to have a middle entry in 10. Coming out of 12. It's looking quite okay. Not too much steering going on. A little bit of a rough transition, but that's just how it's got this year.
Yep. So there's Rudy Rinaldi and Boris Van of Monaco, and they are in 16th position out of our 20 sleds so far. Francesco Friedrich leads a tight battle for the medals, and there's going to be an equally tight battle to make it into the field. 20 down, 5 to go here in Innsbruck in Austria. Coach Tom Delahunty will hope that Ivo de Bruyne produces another of the good results he has in the last couple of weeks. 24-year-old brakeman Janko Francic to try and provide the power at the back. Altenburg in Germany 2 weeks ago was career high in a two-man race with 7th place. And he was 8th in Königssee in the 4-man last week, so he is really starting to find some form. And as with every sport, Anne, this is won or lost predominantly between the ears, and that's where Ivo's now starting to get his game together.
5:27.
Well, it's the 19th fastest start, so they need to find a little more in the second heat if they can.
Great looking line from 2 to 3, but going late into curve 4 and have a really big height. That's why you hit before going into 5. Nice line, middle out of 6, going late into Kreisel. And a good exit out of Kreisel as well. Good looking speed. It's just going out of 9, but corrects it. Claps F10.
DQ'd out of last year's race. And he's been sort of hovering around the top 10 all year so far. 18th at the line, 52.12. Janko better haul on those anchors. They're going right up the end. And they too drop onto the rubber. Hold on to the brakes. Whatever you do, do not release them. You don't want to add insult to injury. There's your teammates going to help.
That's a lot of cursing going on.
Yeah.
I will not translate it.
Nope, no need.
This is a sled Alfie has been driving, and I know from experience this brake is not a very good brake, so I can imagine it's not easy to brake the sled. Just hits the hammer before going into curve 8. And it costs you a lot of speed. I experienced that this morning as well.
Yep. So Ivo de Bruyne in 18th place, and that means that there is no second heat for our Austrian rookie Patrick Geiger. It is going to be a school of hard knocks for him with only 1 year sliding before he was promoted to World Cup. Next up, Dmitry Popov. 6 Europa Cup races here alone for Popov. Made his World Cup debut last weekend in Königssee in two-man with a 13th place finish. And for Dimitri Mitchik, his brakeman, this is his first ever bobsleigh race at all.
Wow.
Yes, 5:26 getaway. So already 100th ahead of Ivo de Bruin. Now, it's either Popov or teammate Alexander Bredikin in the race, unless they're tied.
That's a race in a race.
Yes, it is. Beat your teammate, knock him out, or you don't get a second heat. And where is he at the moment? 18th fastest start. He's in 20th place, inches ahead of Bredikin. Now he's behind.
It's a good-looking line all the way through. But maybe he's just doing a little bit too much of driving to get to the nice lines.
Yeah, a little too much control maybe. Not going with fat runners for speed. Let's have a look at the line. 22nd place, 52.35. So he doesn't get a second heat either. Again, another young development driver on his way up the ladder. And clearly they put Dimitri in on the back to try and get even more speed at the start.
You can see the brakeman getting in sideways. And that's a little risky because it just brings a little more momentum to your sled.
Yeah.
And might break you into a skid before going to curve one. He corrects it nicely, getting his hands in.
22 down, 3 to go here in Innsbruck. Our 23rd starter making his World Cup debut as a two-man driver is Yoongjin Suk, the 28-year-old former brakeman. Won World Cup race in four-man as a driver. That was in Whistler in December 2016. Since then, he's done North America's Cup and this year and last European Cup.
5:25. 17 best start time.
His brakeman making his first start in a two-man since December 2016. That was in Whistler as well.
A little long on curve 3, and that pushed him over early to curve 4. Drops out of 5 a little bit too soon, but nice control in curve 6. Higher line through Kreisel, with a very good exit. Might have hit the hammer though, going into 8. Nails the exit of curve 9. Nice and high line in 10. So good-looking leverage as well. Little rough out of 13.
Well, he's going to be in the field at the expense of Alexander Bredikin. He is in 17th place on his two-man debut, Yoongjin Suk. So, like everybody else, the Koreans now trying to find brakemen who can drive, and it looks as though they may have found another one.
17 fastest start time, 17 fastest down time.
Yeah.
And that's just as good as it gets going at a 9. Straight as an arrow on the right side.
So on his two-man debut, he's in 17th place, ahead of the man who lies 4th in the two-man World Cup points.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. He should be happy with that. His brakeman too. So Yoongjin Suk is in with Ki-kun Jang. And we have a tie for 19th. Ralf Bertsins and Ivo de Bruin. Now then, next up is Timo Röner of Switzerland, 24th of our 25 starters. The 21-year-old son of Marcel Röner, former Swiss bobsled legend. And he made his debut last week in Königssee. Asian Fassler, 26-year-old, came up through European Cup with Röner. And like Röner, made his debut in Königssee last week in the two-man.
5:25, also 17 fastest start time, so just as the Koreans before.
Yeah. Well, that shows they got more than the potential perhaps to get into the top 20.
Good control in the upper part of the track. Goes middle to curve 4, but a little bit of a higher line through curve 4.
Right now, he's in 19th place on the split times.
A tiny skid going into Kreisel. Got a good exit there. A little bit too long on curve 9 and taps going out of 9.
Well, he needed that clean exit because he's out of the race at the moment. 21st on the splits, 22nd on the splits. Not enough speed at the bottom to make it in. He's going to be close, but no cigar with a 52.28. Little disappointment there from Wolfgang Stampfer, but Timo Rohner is definitely a work in progress. Like Michael Vogt, the Swiss are bringing in young drivers.
Not very happy with that, shaking his head.
Well, Brakeman beats the driver into the sled. Not necessarily a great thing at a start like Innsbruck.
Little long on curve 12, flops off, and then jumps into curve 13. That's just as we've seen most of the sleds do.
And again, far from a beginner's run, but doesn't see him into the second heat.
It's a very competitive field. Even a good run is sometimes not good enough.
Really is. Well, Drazen Cilic of Croatia, last sled in the first heat, the 33-year-old. Second and fourth in Königssee. Sorry, did 2 and 4 man in Königssee, wasn't second and fourth. This is third 2-man World Cup as a driver. He did 2 in 2015, and then his third World Cup was last week. And before that, he was a brakeman for Ivan Sola. Teammate Alexander Krasnic has only ever braked in 4-man for Serbia before last week.
Okay. So they've been out of the World Cup business for quite a while.
Yep. And Drazen Cilic's highlight of his career so far was qualifying for 2-man and 4-man for Pyeongchang. 5:48 getaway. That leaves him with an awful lot of work to do at the start.
And a big wave in curve 2 and hitting the left side in the straightaway up until curve 3.
This season is all about keeping the program going after the Olympics, trying to get some races under his belt and rebuild as they start to look towards Beijing.
Very high line out of Kreisel and then dives it out, hits the left wall and the right wall before going into 8. Little long on there, skids and taps. Claps out of 10, a little late in 11.
Some of the biggest smiles in the business from Drazen Cilic and his crew. Comes across the line, 53.62 in 25th place. But in a field this big, on a track this short, I think he probably...
a lot of snow.
Yeah. They must have weaved into the cut snow. In fact, it's not even snow, is it? It's just ice.
That's
ground
a lot
ice.
of snow.
Look at that. Well, no need for a trip to the lake. Not that there is one here. He's had an ice bath before he even got out the sled. And the helmet's full of it as well. That's monstrous.
And he dives out of Kreisel, hitting the left side and then hitting the right side again before going into 8. And a little bit of sideways action there as well. Coming out of 9.
Not the worst entry to 8 we've seen. Late off 9 and the sled rocking and rolling down into 10.
And then a little bit too early into 10. And then you can see just a lot of snow.
Right up by the wall, just hauling it in. And as soon as he gets that helmet full of ice, the brakeman's almost tempted to let go. Drazen is throwing snowballs at him as well, because he's obviously not cold enough yet.
Well, that's why some of the brakemen actually keep their visor on to protect them from the snow.
Well, our first heat leader is Francesco Friedrich. He's won the last 4 straight World Cup races, 3 straight World Cup races and World Championships here. So the last 4 outings, Francesco Friedrich has been on top. But he has a tiny lead. 8 hundredths over Hansi Lochner, a 10th over Oskars Kibermanis. Dominic Dvorak leading a very tight pack behind. Look at that, Dvorak, 4th place. It only takes one mistake in front of him and a good run from him. He could be in the medals.
Yeah. Well, if you have the second fastest start, that's what you can expect with a good run here at Eagles and a very good start, then you'll be right at the top.
Some very tight groups. Look, a 3-way tie for 12th, and at the tail of the field we got a 2-way tie for 19th as well. Tiny gaps all the way up the field. Alexander Brigdikin, Timo Rohner, Geiger, Popov, Cilic do not make the second heat. but you can see all the action. Join Anne van Nieuwenhuis, me, Martin Haven, and the IBSF TV crew. When we come back with our sleds, we will be on air at 3:30 Central European. That's 14:30 GMT. Wherever you are, join us, please. Until then, from Eagles, bye.